It turns out that Kasha made a deal with the biker gang. She offered them 10 tons of gasoline in exchange for safe passage through the canyon. But in this age of the jungle, everything is unpredictable. Before getting out of the car, Kasha told Max how to start the tank. When the bikers found that there were 3 camps chasing them, they changed their minds. Kasha immediately shouted a secret signal for Max to get in the car and escape. The biker gang blew up the huge rock above the canyon to keep the gasoline. The pursuers behind were all blocked outside the canyon. Only the car of the undead Old Joe passed through the canyon. Since Xiaobai had contacted them, he also boarded the car of Old Joe. On the other side, the biker gang was bombing Kasha's tank crazily. With the perfect cooperation of Max and Kaisa, the biker gang was quickly wiped out. At this time, the undead Old Joe also caught up with them. In order to protect Kaisa, Xiao Mei, who was pregnant, took the bullet for Kasha. Old Joe didn't dare to shoot because of the baby in her belly. At this time, Xiaobai volunteered and said he knew how to drive a tank. Old Joe also promised Xiaobai that if he succeeded in killing Kasha, he would personally send him to Valhalla. Xiaobai seemed to be inspired by God and was ready to resurrect. But just as he was about to act, he was tripped by the iron chain on his body. Old Joe cursed him as a waste and planned to go to the battle himself. Old Joe's eldest son shot a fish fork that hit the steering wheel of the tank, and Max's hand was caught on the door by the wire. At this critical moment, Xiaomei cut the steel cable in time to save Max. But at this moment, the tank hit the boulder next to it. Xiaomei couldn't dodge and fell down. She was stuck to death by the tank that came in time. Because of this, Max and the others had a chance to breathe. Xiaomei's death also made Xiaobai fall into deep self-blame. Finally, under the red-haired woman's persuasion, Xiaobai cheered up and joined Kasha's team. Max learned from Kasha that she once lived in the oasis, but was captured by Old Joe when she was a child. She suffered for more than 20 years under Old Joe's care. She finally got the chance to escape. For the freedom of several healthy girls and Kasha's own redemption, she needed to find her former homeland. As night fell, Max laid mines on the road to slow down Old Joe's pursuit. The move really worked and successfully stopped Old Joe's convoy. But Kasha's chariot also fell into the mud pit. Don't breathe, Tasha hit it accurately. The searchlight of the crawler vehicle also blinded the opponent's eyes. Xiaobai also used the dead tree in front to help the tank escape from the predicament. The engine overheated, and they could only move forward after it cooled down. At the critical moment, Max decided to turn back and deal with the pursuers while the others were responsible for the engine. Not long after the temperature dropped, there were bursts of explosions in the distance. Max slowly came out of the smoke and brought back a large amount of weapons and ammunition. They walked along the road and continued forward. After a night of rushing, Tasha saw a familiar building, which meant they were not far from the oasis. Kasha slowly got off the car and shouted her name loudly. Then, a group of wilderness knights appeared. They were the tribesmen that Kasha had once been. After they confirmed each other's eyes, they enthusiastically greeted her and embraced each other affectionately. This might be the only warmth left in the end times. But the reality slapped Kasha in the face. The oasis in her memory was no longer there. The old man told Kasha that the swamp she passed by last night was the oasis. These old men, who had experienced many hardships, were the only remaining members of the tribe. Kasha's hope was shattered in an instant. Having lost her faith, she sat in the desert for a long time without getting up. As night fell, the desert looked particularly desolate under the moonlight. They looked at the satellites passing through the sky and suddenly thought of the beauty of saving the world. At that time, they could transmit information all over the world without having to kill each other for survival. But now, all this had become a distant dream. Old Joe's convoy would soon catch up, and they must find another way out. Tasha decided to leave the chariot here. She filled up all the motorcycles with gas and wanted to take everyone across the desert. But Max told her his own plan to change the current situation. Fleeing across the border was not necessarily the best option. They could go back the same way and seize Old Joe's fort because there was plenty of food and water there. The fortress had become an empty city without anyone guarding it. Everyone immediately agreed to turn around and go back the same way. Old Joe also guessed their intention and immediately ordered his men to pursue the enemy. The battle was about to begin. Although the cavalrymen were all skilled, Kasha and her men gradually fell behind due to the huge gap in strength. The wind chariot was already in tatters. Old Joe even sent out a garish circus. They immediately caught Kasha by the neck. Fortunately, the old man and Max were on the roof of the car and confronted the war boys. However, Max was affected by hallucinations from time to time. Max was pierced by a sharp sword. At the critical moment, Kasha braked suddenly and threw the enemy off the roof of the car. Max was almost knocked off the car. Fortunately, Kasha came to the rescue in time, but she was stabbed by the masked man. At this critical moment, Max jumped onto the enemy's tank and killed the soldiers on the tank. Afterwards, he found that the tank was on fire. Max jumped out but was caught and almost pinned to the ground. At this time, Old Joe rushed up and blocked the front of the tank. Seeing this, Kasha asked Shia to take over the steering wheel while she found an opportunity to get on the tank. After Old Joe's death, everyone started to move away, leaving only Shia to cover the rear. But at this moment, Dasha suddenly appeared again. Then he stood up. Shia also made his own choice. Shia turned the steering wheel hard. The tank flipped over at the exit of the canyon. The pursuers behind were killed by the group in the explosion. Max looked at Kasha, who was breathing heavily, and without hesitation, provided her with blood. At the same time, he also told her his name. Not long after, everyone arrived at the fortress of the immortal Old Joe. The people saw the tragic death of the tyrant who had oppressed them for many years and began to shout. From that moment on, Kasha became the new master of the valley. Refugees no longer had to worry about water problems. A new era was coming. Max stood silently in the crowd and smiled at Kasha. He would continue to embark on his own violent road.